Okay. Welcome, everybody. We're going to close out the shared interest segment here with some slides. Then we're going to go to the homework I sent out yesterday and set up the next section. So I think what's really important in your personal life is to inventory and address shared interests in any relationship. I can completely relate my first marriage, which was a divorce, in the fact that we had zero shared interests. I mean, literally zero. And in your work life, I think I described this work I did with the Volkswagen team in China and with flight projects. You can take two teams. This exercise may take a total of 1 hour, and it's very powerful. So that closes out shared interest. You got any comments or questions on this section before we move on?
I thought the exercise was actually very go ahead, Nico.
No, I think I want to say the same that you want, so please go ahead and I'll fill in.
Well, Nico and I did our shared interest exercise together. And from my perspective, it was much different than I had anticipated, in a good way. And I think what was most powerful for me was, even though Nico and I think processed the world in very different ways, we were able to easily find a lot of things that were in common. And so by doing that, it helped me understand Nico, or that's not quite the right word, but kind of process him easier, because I could kind of filter out a lot of the material because I knew we had the shared interest, but then I could focus on how he processes things differently from me. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, frankly, having done this in a bunch of workshops, I'm always amazed at the impact of this exercise. People are hugging each other and come and talk to the group. A lot of the shared interests were around raising children. A lot of the workshops I did in China were sort of 40 to 50-year-olds with kids. Nico, you want to talk about this too? While your battery's good?
Yeah, no, Charlie, I have a challenge usually, for people to understand me and understand what I'm busy with. I know by now that I'm usually a challenge for people to understand, and just give directions to discussions towards shared interest, create that mutual ground. Otherwise, I come across as an alien anyway in the circles that I'm yeah, because it's all over the place. Imagine if I share with South Africans that I'm talking to these people, with their background from America, like every Saturday and every Tuesday. They just don't know what to say, and and then I will hear afterwards some comments and so on. Even the connection with Larissa as well. That's just one side of it, So focusing on shared interests is, I can literally steer some discussions and connections and conversations more towards that, instead of sharing some alien stuff with them.
Yeah. Good.
Like Sunday evening, I was like in this northern part of and when I get there was like 15 people gathering, and they said, this is a visit, like first time in 2 years. I have now to sing to them, and they bring the guitar, and now I've got to sing to the whole group. So Nat, I forgot to mention what I enjoy is guitar and singing, and I do that everywhere and for a lot of people. So it's I've even forgot some of those things, but it's really a good exercise. Enjoyed it. Learning a lot about Nat. It's great.
Great, thank you. it strikes me that as we move what seems to be increasingly with a warlike footing with China, that how many shared interests we have with them if we could just focus on that. I mean, our biggest trading partner, right? I mean, that's, anyway,
But I mean, you're crossing boundaries, Charlie. You're crossing cultural boundaries with this, and creating that context in
I
China.
guess that's right.
It
Yeah.
just demonstrates the power of this.
Yep. Yep. This would be amazing. Okay. Very good. I'm gonna exit this and go to the thing I sent out for homework. Didn't go out till yesterday, so maybe most of you didn't do it, but I'll look at it anyway. Let's see. There we go. So I thought I would set up the inclusion piece with our usual sort of 15 minutes of conversation around these questions. Think about a time you felt excluded. I think for many of us, if you're ever part of a team where somebody picks the players or the in-group in high school, what was it like? Can anybody relate to this? Tanya's shaking her head. Yeah,
Yep, feels terrible, honestly.
it was terrible. I was reflecting on this and thinking that another word for this is acceptance. And this is such a close cousin to feeling appreciated, isn't it?
Mm.
I mean, and think about, I think about an ideal, say, a marital relationship. Wouldn't it be defined as something where someone accepts you totally as you are? Isn't that the most important thing?
You want us to react?
You can speak. I'm trying to stimulate group conversation here, is what I'm trying to do.
Okay. Yeah, I don't need any stimulation. I just need to know if I can. This is again a huge factor in my life, and don't want to repeat myself, but in South Africa, it's just a different environment, different interest. So this kind of thing, it's not only thinking back at school days or when I was like a teenager, it is definitely still happening. But then the understanding of the bigger context gives me a lot of peace and acceptance of that, and even in enjoying your own, whatever you want to call it, uniqueness or differentiation and so on. I really think it boils down to self-knowledge, to know exactly who you are so that you can really,
Yeah.
cope with this and not just get into the negative, not get stuck into the negative emotions.
I'm been interested in a long time of how common this is during adolescence. Again, high school, junior high school. And for many years, I focused on the idea that adolescence was about this hormone change. But I think there's something bigger going on. It's a social context change. You've got to transition from getting love from your family, which is what you mostly worked on as a younger child, to now getting it from peers. And this is the stress that I think is the greatest in adolescence. Anybody got any thoughts about this?
Mhm.
Well, if I can shoot again, Charlie, I'm not sure. You send us a link, but I get a lot of information. This a funny way to approach these kind of things, which can end up in bullying as well. They've got this approach in New Zealand. Is that the link that you've sent us, or was it what about religion?
This was a file I sent you, wasn't a link. What I've got on the screen is a file, a Word document I sent you yesterday. It wasn't a link.
Okay. Okay, I got a link from you as well, but I'll just follow up. But otherwise I'll share it with you and you can have a look at it and see if you can use it. But they've got a very unique approach in New Zealand.
Okay.
Hi, Charlie. Hello, everyone. My
Oh.
apologies. I had a- I
Hey,
couldn't
Drinka.
I couldn't get out of the meeting, so
Oh,
I was a bit late. But seeing this, so how did it feel? So I remember as the young adult being quite. I'm not a sports person, so I remember feeling excluded from a lot of in groups, and it it feels hard, and it depends on the person. Some people try really, really hard to fit in, and some people just retreat and get into themselves, or you find something else. So for me, most of the time I was actually trying to find something else that I'm good at, and how do I
Mhm.
how do I go in. But I mean, for the like, I think in my mind that's probably the easiest solution on the person, because if you constantly try to get in, and well, you don't have physical ability to get in, it gets really, really hard, and people are then prone to doing various different things to try and do something that they cannot. But also those who retreat back in themselves, that's also I mean, could be quite a serious, it could lead to serious mental health issues down the line.
Yeah, for sure.
But it certainly does. But it's also, anytime I think about how I felt, then it always brings me to think about my own actions, and how are my own actions, like, is it possible that I made someone feel excluded like that?
Mhm.
That's always at the back of my mind.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, back to our
In this,
slides. Go ahead, Nico.
sorry, just one comment there. The teenagers of today, obviously, they have to deal with a totally different, kind of, whether it's appreciation or rejection than what we had with this online thing going on.
Yep.
And the statistics that I picked up from that link that I will share with Charlie, and he can do with it, is like 1 out of 5 children get exposed to extreme, whatever you want to call it, bullying or discrimination. And there's a lot of suicides coming from that. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
changing environment as well, of being excluded, what it's doing to people or children and
I think that's
teenagers.
really spot on, and I think the fact that this is so impersonal now just amps it up a
Mm.
whole lot. Good. So proceeding into this, I thought it'd be useful to have a little pre-discussion. Exclusions can incite anger or rage. And we're moving in, just so you know, we're moving up our chart here into the yellow. And about broken agreements erode trustworthiness. So about inclusion. So how did I get onto this? I worked for some years for TRW as a consultant, and a proposal team was formed, and the vice president brought in a guy from another part of the company, and he completely ignored the people in business development who had followed this thing for the past 5 years when the proposal came along. And I saw this expressions of anger in the proposal room from various people, which I expected. And then somehow, against all odds, we won the thing. And the company was actually quite good to me. They'd let me invite me back for these ceremonies. They had a little thing at the Marriott with some dinner and whatnot. And the vice president put the same guy in charge of the awards ceremony. And he excluded the guys from business development again, even in the awards ceremony. And one of them was sitting next to me. And when he saw he wasn't even going to be mentioned, even though he'd been the lead person previously, he smashed his face into the table, broke his nose, and said, "I'll never do a proposal for this effing company again." So this is really hurtful. Also, I like to observe myself, and the neighborhood I live in, it's only 7 homes, used to have these parties, and I hated these things. Junko and I are both blues. Socializing with people that have nothing in common with except we share a road and a gate is just torture. So when these things are coming, we both tried to be out of the country if we could. And so one time a thing comes along and I'm aware it's happening and we haven't gotten an invitation. And I began to get angry about not being invited to something I didn't want to go to. This is how powerful this need is. So finally, I called up the people who were hosting the party. They said, "Oh yeah, we put your invitation in your newspaper box." Well, in those days, we don't get the newspaper anymore, so it didn't look in there. So now I'm really stuck. I'm now that I've owned up that I know about the invitation, everything else, we've got to go. What was so fascinating was I got angry about not being included in something I didn't even want to go to. That's how big the need is. Another big thing is withheld truths, which are unspoken lies. And I saw this in action in a workshop. It was a NASA contractor and the NASA people. NASA people had changed the scope of the contract and told the contractor's management, and the management never told the people. This came to the surface in storylines, and we had 2 hours of crying and screaming and grief. So this is powerful stuff. The withheld truths are really, really bad. Appropriately including others gives you authentic relationships and efficiency absent unnecessary anger. Under inclusions, people feel left out. We talked about this. It gets to the point of exclusion, you get anger. Over inclusion just wastes people's time. And the way we do this, I think, is way too many meetings. So we're going to take a look, and people say to me, "Well, I understand this is true for Americans, but how about Germans or Chinese or whatever?" I'm going to show you it's even animals. We're going to look at how we fail to be authentic by habituating personas, selves we put up that are fake. A very profound example of a university president, Judith Albino. This might have been your class, Nat. I don't remember. I did 8 classes in 2 years, but this was a very powerful lesson for me. And then you're going to do as homework persona interviews. You're going to interview each other's personas, not their persons. And we're going to look at the waste of over inclusions, too many meetings. So animals need to feel included too. What happens when a capuchin monkey feels excluded?
So she gives a rock to us, that's the task. And we give her a piece of cucumber and she eats it. The other one needs to give a rock to us. And that's what she does. And she gets a grape. And she eats it. The other one sees that. She gives a rock to us now, gets again cucumber. She tests the rock now against the wall. She needs to give it to us. And she gets cucumber again.
So about people's need to feel heard, that's a very powerful inclusion need. So when I'm running the astrophysics division, as you might imagine, I frequently had to move money around. You always try and mitigate the most debilitating problems. And I would do this, I thought, really thoughtfully. I'd take a lot of time to explain the rationale. And I thought that there was no other way you could even do this. Yet there are people who'd be very angry with me, give me pushback and argument. This perplexed me because I thought I've done this in the nicest possible way. Then I tried an experiment. Before I'm gonna decide against somebody, I would invite them into my office for like 15 minutes of time when I would completely listen to them. And I found that the need for feeling heard was what was driving it, not the need for the money. Many a man would rather you heard his story than granted his request. The best way to persuade is with your ears. So I want to talk about how common this is in the workplace. I think, Dorinka, you sort of mentioned this, or maybe, I forget, maybe not. Imagine how you feel if you approach your colleagues and having a conversation, they disperse with no explanation. You're at your desk and notice your colleagues joking as they go to lunch and no one looks in your direction. You arrive at a meeting on time to find out they've begun without you. We thought everyone important had already arrived. Social exclusion is any interaction where someone feels they've been ignored, avoided, or unacknowledged. Have a detrimental impact on your psychological well-being. I think you talked about this, Nico. Even worse than being harassed. People socially excluded at work say, I feel invisible, I feel helpless, I feel a sense of sadness. We have a fundamental need to feel a sense of belonging, and the reason for the evolutionary pictures here is goes back into our tribalism as part of our innate makeup that help us survive through evolution. And neuroscience shows it lights up the same areas of the brain as physical pain.
And imagine how you would feel if you experienced any of the following interactions I'm about to describe with your colleagues. So imagine that you see two of your colleagues in the middle of a conversation and you approach them to sort of join in. And as soon as you get there, the conversation sort of dies and your colleagues disperse without really giving you an explanation. Imagine that you're sitting at your desk and you witness a group of your colleagues laughing and joking as they head out to lunch, and none of them look in your direction or invite you to come along. Finally, imagine that you get to a meeting on time only to find that everyone has already begun without you, and one of your colleagues sort of casually apologizes to you saying, you know, we thought everyone who was important or necessary had already arrived. Laughter suggests that maybe that happens every once in a while. Each of these examples represent interactions of social exclusion. Social exclusion is any interaction in the workplace where someone comes away feeling as though they've been ignored, avoided, or unacknowledged, or any combination thereof. On the surface, it might not appear as social exclusion is sort of the worst experience you could have in the workplace. We know it's bad, but it's not the worst thing, right? We typically assume that the most toxic forms of social interactions are ones in which we feel belittled or insulted or demeaned in some way, types of mistreatment that are more in line with the notion of workplace harassment. However, a growing body of research in social psychology and as well in organizational behavior has begun to explore how social exclusion is a very unique form of mistreatment. And as a result of this uniqueness, it can actually have a more detrimental impact on our psychological well-being, even compared to being harassed in some circumstances. So in particular, when it comes to social exclusion, we find that employees describe very self-defeating emotions attached to it. So when we ask them, what do you feel when you feel like you've been socially excluded at work? They'll say, I feel invisible, I feel helpless, I feel a sense of sadness. When it comes to harassment, the number one emotion we typically hear is anger. In addition, when it comes to being socially excluded at work, employees typically describe their experiences as very ambiguous. They find it really difficult to make sense of what's happening to them, to make sense of why they're being socially excluded. Sometimes they worry that it might just all be in their imagination because it's such subtle social interactions. Also because social exclusion usually doesn't violate any particular norms or rules. They find it difficult to go to HR or talk to their supervisor about how they're feeling. And when a socially excluded employee talks to their friends and family about their situation, the number one piece of advice they tend to hear is, well, you don't go to work to make friends. Just suck it up, do your job, be the best employee you can be, and eventually you'll be acknowledged. That's not the most satisfying advice for someone who feels socially excluded in the workplace. And in particular, social psychology research has uncovered that our reactions to social exclusion are actually evolutionary bound. We have a fundamental need as human beings to feel a sense of belonging and to feel that we're acknowledged by people we rely upon, especially people in the workplace. And as a result of this need, neuroscience research shows that when we're socially excluded, it actually lights up the same areas of the brain as experiencing physical pain. So it's a really detrimental experience.
Okay, on your feet. Time to move. So this is the exercise we already did a little bit. I'm going to ask you to think about doing this with somebody else later if you want. In the workshop, we'd normally everybody be stopping and doing this exercise. So personas. This is a way that we take ourselves out of authenticity and others don't feel included by us. And how do these arise? In childhood, a time of true helplessness, we don masks or assume roles to show others who we think we should be, and really to gain love and avoid pain. So childhood personas align with innate personality when they work. When do they work? They work when the parents recognize and understand them. So imagine you're a green personality, and other things being equal, your persona would be in a thing that's comfortable for you, which is caring for other people. But imagine you've got two hyper orange parents. This is not going to work. So what do? If your primary function is intuitor, as it is for me, and I think for maybe Nat and Tanya, then you tend to go to the neighbor over here. So friends of mine who looked at this, got this. I had a guy I worked with who was a big green, both parents were hyper Germans, and he went over and adapted into the blue area for his persona to survive. Conversely, if you're primarily a sensor, you're going to adapt into the relational persona. Everybody got this, what I'm saying here? Okay. So these tend to align with innate personality, whether friendly, intellectual, or disciplined. So what's this about? Well, when you're authentic, you're connecting and relating through your heart. And your persona, you're relating through your role. I really get this when I see people that I would name comfortable in their own skin. And that's people that are being authentic. And people are in a role, their actions are stiff and choreographed. I've seen this occasionally with people that got promoted up to, say, CEO of a company too quickly. I see them walk down the hall, they're stiff, like they've got a stick up their rear end, and they don't last, because without the connection, you don't survive. And the biggest point is others feel connected and included by you when you're authentic. Others feel disconnected and excluded. So I had a great example of this when I was at CU And we had the first female president, Judith Albino. And the Daily Camera, the newspaper of Boulder, a little newspaper, every day had these scathing articles. Now, I had not seen anything like this except in Washington, D.C., which is the meanest city in the world. And I was surprised at this level of hostility every day, something about her or her husband. So I had my class write a letter. And the way I did this was I invited all the students over to my house on a Saturday afternoon. We used Post-it notes to put key thoughts down. I organized this into a page-and-a-half letter, and all the students signed it, and I signed it and sent it to her. So I said, we're a leadership class. We should be able to help her. So turns out that about a week later, one of my students invited her to come speak to the class. Now, my students weren't empowered to do things like this. I did all kinds of things with my classes and that. I don't know about yours, but we had dinners out. I took people to Aspen once. I did all kinds of things that the university didn't like and never knew about. So anyway, I decided that it would be worthwhile to go meet with her ahead of time and tell her about our class and who I was. So I took the student and I went and had a meeting with her. It was very pleasant. And I said, Dr. Albino, I said, what's really important here is that I've got some great kids in this class that are going to do wonderful things. And I want you to come and speak your full truth to them about what's it like for you every day to pick up the newspaper. There's hostile stuff in it. Can you do that? She said, yes, I can do that. So she comes into the class, and have you ever had this experience where someone put a tape in their head, blah, 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 blah. So what she's doing, she's in persona and completely inauthentic. And students are getting bored. They're looking around. Now, these are undergraduates. So I have no idea what's going to happen next. So I go up to her and say, Dr. Albino, remember we met in your office. Would you please tell them what it's like to pick up that newspaper and read this criticism you every day? So she goes up, blah, 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 blah. Well, now I'm getting worried because I taught my students the bullshit sign. So the bullshit sign comes from ants that are rolling a piece of bullshit up the hill. And they turned to each other and flashed their antennas and said, look out for the bullshit. So I'm starting to figure, what am I going to do when my students start getting up and doing this with their fingers? How am I going to explain this to the president of the university? So I had to take a risk. I went up, put my hands on her, which was dangerous, turned her to face me, put my hands on her shoulders and said, Judith, would you please tell them what it's really like? It's safe here. And she said, are you sure it's safe? And I said, yes, it's safe. You can see the physical change. The mask dropped off. She said, it hurts like hell. And she went on to talk for the rest of the hour about her personal experiences of what this was like. And we're spellbound. I mean, the class is just like, so keep my agreements. We could have listened to her for the rest of the day. Hour and 15-minute class, 10 minutes to go. I go up and say, thank you, Dr. Albino. That was really magnificent. The students and I got a lot from this. You can see the mask came back down and she left. So this is 40 undergraduate students right before lunch. So the first time I dismissed the class, I sort of stood in front of one of the doorways and found myself about 30 feet down the hall. So I learned to go behind this desk, this table in the front that was anchored into the concrete. So when everybody left in a rush, I wouldn't be pushed out the door. So I go behind the table and say, class dismissed. Nobody moved. I didn't know what to do. I went and sat back down. Nobody moved. It's complete silence. Got back up. Said, what do you want to do? They said, we want to talk about what we saw. So we talked for another hour in the class about what we saw, the transformation. The sad story is that she was fired from the university president job. She was banned to the Denver office, Denver campus, which is a big step down because Boulder's the main deal. And what a tragedy. And what I'm pretty sure happened here was that she was an excellent professor, probably classes were fantastic, and she moved up quicker than she was ready and probably encountered some of the same misogamy that other women do when they get into high places, and was uncomfortable or I think fear is the primary thing that brings these personas up. Went into persona, lost the connection with people, and once that happened, it was game over. So I think back on it and ask myself, what if I had sat down and explained this to her? Could it have made a difference? I don't think so. This is something this is deep stuff. You need to ruminate on this for a while. I don't think she could have done this. But if she could have been as authentic in her meetings with the people she needed to meet with as president as she was in our class, she would have been a complete success. So there we are. Comments or questions? Okay.
Yes, I have, but I'm just getting concerned that I'm reacting so much today. But I'll keep it short. I had to pay a lot of attention to this whole issue and so on. So I just want to mention how important personal boundaries are and what to do about the growth of personal boundaries, emotional boundaries. I think about the work of Clouden Townsend. The concept of self-differentiation is coming up, so important for this kind of situation. That's a work of Murray Bowen from microbiology. And obviously there's Francis Fukuyama's work on identity. So identity is for me like a key word, you know, in upholding yourself or handling situations like this and seeking for answers and how to get out of the corner. Thank you.
Okay. The gorilla's persona. A zoo's gorilla dies during their most popular season. They can't afford to lose the attraction, so they secretly hire one of the employees to be a gorilla in a suit for an extra $500 a week. He quickly becomes popular as everyone wants to see the human-like gorilla. When his popularity wanes, he climbs out of his enclosure and dangles from a tree in the lion exhibit. He loses his grip, falls, and screams, "Somebody help." The lion pounces on top of him and then whispers, "Shut up or you get us both fired." So this is about the problem with personas is when you habituate them. This is the movie The Great Santini. And this is a military guy who lives his life around his Marine pilot persona. He treats his children like soldiers. There's no authenticity, no heart connection, no joy, no love.
Okay, Hogs. I've listened to you bellyache about moving to this new town. This said bellyaching will end as of 15-30 hours. Will not affect the morale of the squadron henceforth. Do I make myself clear?
Yes, sir!
I know it's rough to leave your friends and move every year. But you are Marine kids and can chew nails while other kids are sucking cotton candy. And you're Meachams. Meacham is a thoroughbred, a winner all the way. Gets the best grades, wins the most awards, and excels in sports. Meacham never gives up. I want you Hogs to let this bird know you're here. I want these crackers to wake up and wonder what the hell blew in a town. Okay, Hogs, by nightfall I want this camp in inspection order. Do you read me loud and clear?
Yes, sir! Sir.
I said, do you read me loud and clear?
Yes, sir!
Outstanding. Sergeant, dismiss the troops.
Dismiss.
He does remind me of someone from the movies, but it's not Rhett Butler.
Who's that?
Godzilla.
So, the Twilight Zone. A wealthy man forces his greedy heirs to wear masks he's chosen for them until midnight when he dies. To their horror, they find they have become their masks. Notice they have no connection to him as a person. They've always been a persona. He, being authentic, is unaffected. Ruby's not working. Let me see. Should I fix it?
You came to reap everything I've sown, to collect everything I've built. Well, I shall not disappoint you. Everything is yours.
Let's see what. Well,
You came to reap everything I've sown, to collect everything I've built. Well, I shall not disappoint you. Everything is yours. Everything is prepared, the will is made, the four of you inherit everything I own. Everything. Money, house, property holdings, stocks, bonds, everything.
Father, you're breaking our hearts.
Oh, that's the most touching thing you ever dredged up by way of conversation, Wilfred. But I must include this addenda, this small proviso. You shall wear your masks until midnight. If any one of you should take them off, from my estate you shall each receive train fare back to Boston, and that's it.
Well, we won't be spoil sports. If this is your pleasure, Father, we'll indulge you.
And now, my dear ones, we will wait until midnight.
Oh, this is horrible. Oh, this is horrible, Father. I'm suffocating. I really am suffocating.
I've had dull times before, Grandfather, but this is the worst. This takes it. I don't know about the rest of you, but I've had it.
I can't stand this thing on my face another minute. I'm gonna take it off. I don't care.
Stop it. You stop it.
I don't blame her. I don't blame her a bit. This is cruel, Father.
I have to agree, Father. Really, this thing has gone far enough. We've been here for hours staring at these grotesque masks. I think there is a limit.
Please, Father. Please let us take them off now.
Have you all had your say? Paula, Wilfred Jr., you, Emily, and that captain of industry you're married to? Is there nothing else you have to say to me?
Only that I'm feeling buried alive. Me too. I think you're out of your mind.
Come on, let us take the masks off.
Father, I appeal to you now. It's more than just discomfort. It's becoming quite unbearable.
Okay.
You came to reap everything I've sown.
I'll check these, why these aren't working. Shucks.
You came to reap everything I've sown, to collect everything I...
Anyway, I'll just tell you what happens. Their faces have all become deformed like the masks. They've become the masks. This is the great danger in with personas, is when they become your identity. I think the last time I ran this was likely on my, I don't actually on this computer, so I don't know why this happened. Anyway, what the message here is that you've got to be careful, just like Bo Meacham and these people. you don't let the personas become you. The personas can be very useful if you put them on for protection. So when I'm testifying before the hostile Congress about the Hubble mirror flaw, I'm not bringing my full vulnerable self to that room. It's shields up and phasers armed in my persona to protect myself. The problem is if I didn't take it back off when I went back to work, my interactions with people would feel inauthentic and ineffective. That's the lesson. And here's I hope this works. This is a single file, so it'll be easier to fix. This is about how people adopt personas at work. It's about a guy who sees his boss use a tough guy persona, and he wears this tough guy mask, and people ignore the mask, just like in the opera, Phantom of the Opera, the mask is ignored. And he busies himself being perfect. And of course, this doesn't work. Then there's the movie The Mask, where Jim Carrey becomes the mask and talks about demasking at work. And the effect of it is almost nuclear.
The concept of the mask comes from a conversation I had with a leader in my original research who confessed that, at the start of his journey, he felt like an imposter. When he was promoted within the company, he knew he was ill-equipped to cope with such a big job, so he attempted to fake it and put on the mask of the tough guy. He thought, it's working for my boss, he's scaring the hell out of me. When this didn't work, he thought, I'll try the nice guy. Not surprisingly, this also failed, and he admitted to me that he felt like a bit of a fake. I draw a parallel between this leader's masking and that of the Phantom in the famous musical, The Phantom of the Opera. Just like the Phantom, this leader knew he was wearing a mask, the leader's team knew he was wearing a mask, and he knew that they knew he was wearing a mask, and yet no one was talking about the mask. Another leader attempted to maintain the image of a golden boy while internally having a crisis of self-doubt. Another maintained an exterior of perfection whilst privately feeling exhausted by keeping up the facade. I found that each of the leaders were masking in some way during their leadership journeys, though not all of them adopted the Phantom's mask. Rather than consciously concealing themselves, several of the leaders actually adopted a different persona at work in an effort to be successful. This resembled Jim Carrey's alter ego in the movie The Mask, where he actually becomes the flamboyant and aggressive character called The Mask. One leader originally took pride in being a leader of a team that was regarded as the special forces of the public sector. While this had served him well early in his career, his extremely aggressive behaviour increasingly damaged relationships and created enemies. Just as Jim Carrey's character realises that the mask isn't all it's cracked up to be, this leader realised that the authoritarian persona he had adopted was at odds with his deeply held values as a leader and as a parent. All of the leaders in my original study reached a point where they wanted to demask as they realised their mask was no longer delivering success or had become too heavy to uphold any longer. The internal conflict they were feeling often increased their readiness to drop the mask. This readiness was reinforced by their teams in group forums, where subordinates pressured their leader to accept their failings and engage authentically in the process of change. This is what the renowned scholar Edgar Schein calls coercive persuasion. Once a leader drops their mask, they need to rebuild their leadership identity. This rebuilding process entails exploring the leader's aspirations, values and strengths, and the important roles they play in their professional and personal life. In this way, leaders are able to drop their mask and craft a more meaningful and congruent leadership identity. In each case, the new identity is not only fully aligned to the leader's vision for their leadership, but also to their life as a whole. As Gandhi once said, happiness is when what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. With the dropping of the mask, the leader sent a message that being authentic was now far more important than appearing perfect. This led to the profound insight from one leader that the power this congruence unleashes is practically atomic in scale. You get more done, you build more trust, your interactions with people become more enriching, you feel more fulfilled, and on it goes.
We've got 4 minutes to go. I've got another module here about male masculinity in the U.S. as another form of persona. But I thought I'd just let us have the last 4 minutes for conversation as usual. So open floor, about what you learned from this segment.
Something.
Maybe. For me, there is a constant pull. And I realized this recently, after accepting that job offer, that there is, like, when I'm working on the things I like to work on and I'm being my authentic self, they like to pull me out and be in front of our big clients and traveling and doing speaking engagements. I hate it. And because I have to put on this persona,
Yeah.
right? I really dislike it. And I was pretty clear this week when, you know, Target is one of our big clients and they want me to go. And immediately once I accept this job offer, I've got things in my inbox to go and speak to the leadership of Target and to basically sell them on things. And that's not really the role that I'm in. I am more the oracle of truth. I'm the product leader.
Mhm.
So it often put me in these positions where the salespeople are kind of spinning a yarn, but then I'm there to like make it sound like it's legitimate. And I hate it because it feels disingenuous.
Mhm.
And so I just got super clear this week. So this is really timely on, I'm not doing that.
Mhm. Mhm. Good.
I'm not going to do it. And there'll probably be times where I'm kind of forced into it, but there will have to be some agreements so that I can remain authentic and happy in this role and don those personas minimally. And
Yep,
only
yep,
when needed.
yep. Good. Yeah, personas take a lot of energy to hold up.
It really does. And I don't enjoy going out and doing all of that. Some of it's previous trauma, I think, of having to do so much
Mhm.
that I'm super clear now that I dislike it. And it's not really being my authentic self.
Nice, nice.
So can a persona be as simple as a shifting out of your home base?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I think an intentional shifting is fine, and I think Tanya said it beautifully. I mean, it is draining. I mean, I was aware when I first got the astrophysics division job that I was wearing the super competent persona. That's what I thought I had to be. I'll talk a little more about that, but this is heavy, dangerous stuff. And this is another piece where consciousness is really the issue. And Tanya, what you said was beautiful in that regard, being conscious of what's going on here. That's exactly the point, okay? And setting boundaries around what you are and aren't going to do.
And I think I'd like to understand that more. I think because it feels like this persona shifting happens, like you said, fear is driving it, but I think there's sometimes external pressure. And I certainly feel that from salespeople or CEO, oh, let me get you out in front of all these people. You sound so smart. And so there's this pressure to do it as well. And so just talking about how to navigate that, I think is helpful.
I want to stop, keep my agreement, stop on time. It's 10 o'clock. Marissa, I want to talk to you about doing my persona interview with me.
Sure.
You can stay on and we can do it offline.
Yeah, I'll stay.
Thank you all. See you next week. Good session. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
everybody.
It was great seeing you all.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Have a
Bye.
good